Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on SaaS resiliency best practices, strategies for complete visibility and protection. We're doing this webinar together with Okta. Let's give people a few minutes to stream in, and we'll get going as soon as we can. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're still people streaming in, so we'll get going in about another 30 seconds. If you just joined, you can add a little bit to the chat, maybe say where you're from and what your current beverage of choice is. For me, it's still coffee. It's still early over here on the West Coast. All right, let's get started. I see a bunch of people joined. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Nijmeijer. I'm part of the Okta product management team. Very excited to be talking to you today about a webinar that we have prepared together with Okta for you on SaaS resiliency best practices, strategies for complete visibility and protection. Let's get going with a quick overview of the agenda. Before I get going, please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box, like I just asked you to do. If you are drinking something, please share where you are in the chat box. Let's see where everybody is from. We'll start, of course, with introductions between me and Akash. Akash is going to kick it off with basically giving you an overview of what Okta has been working on around access control, identity management. We'll dive into kind of laying out what we see as the evolution of the tech landscape, complexities of securing that modern data center, right, as it basically has evolved over the last 20 years. And then we'll go a little bit deeper and show you how HYCU is built on the Okta platform and how we're working together really to, like I said, secure your data center. And then we have, of course, a few next steps at the end. We'll answer Q&A at the end. Like I said, feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box, and we'll queue those up at the end. What you get out of today's session, like I said, my name is Mark Nijmeijer, Senior Director of Product Management here at HYCU. We'll talk about the role of identity. We'll explain what the realities are around shared responsibility, especially in the world of SaaS. We'll show you how to discover important data sources that you might not even realize you have in your organization and applications that maybe need protection. We'll go through what the importance is of really having a multi-layered security design. And then in the end, of course, how HYCU and Okta can help you sleep at night. Akash, you want to introduce yourself and then kick it off today?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name is Akash Chandok. I'm on the product team for resiliency and scale at Okta. I'm also joined today by my colleague and partner in crime, Jonathan Campos, who's on the product marketing team. When we started brainstorming this webinar, we knew it was going to be very valuable to organizations and leaders. So we're really excited to be here today and just want to thank you for joining us. Before Mark deep dives into some of those great topics he was just talking about, I wanted to briefly touch on how Okta is really integral part to that story. Mark, if we could go to the next slide, please. So really, organizations today are facing a difficult dilemma. There's a lot of pressures to cut costs, deliver operational excellence, all while protecting the organization from bad actors. And this is where we come in, and it really starts with our commitment to your identity security by providing a unified identity platform that's based off best-of-breed solutions to your in the identity landscape. So it starts with access management, and our mission here is to protect every resource, every device, every person, anywhere. We then layer on identity governance to ensure a user has the right level of access from their first day in their organization to their last. And finally, with privileged access management, we want to ensure that access to sensitive resources is really only available to those that absolutely need it at the right time. And we augment all this value with our Okta integration network, which reduces the time to value for organizations by offering more than 7,000 pre-built integrations that are both standards-based and platform neutral. And you may be wondering, Mark, if we could go to the next slide as well. You may be wondering, why is identity security so important? It's because identity is mission critical security infrastructure for us. And that's really how we perceive it as well here at Okta. We understand we're the first line of defense for your organization. And when identity is under attack or it's unavailable, your productivity tanks, your revenue drops, your brand image gets impacted. You also could see, a loss of trust across your value chain from partners, suppliers, customers, and potentially even, legal ramifications from a compliance standpoint. If you go to the next slide, because we are mission critical infrastructure and customers rely on us to protect and manage access to their most critical infrastructure applications and data, we built a platform based off of three key building blocks, and we like to say it's a platform built for trust. So it starts with always on, secure by design, and built for scale. And you may be wondering, what does that mean? For always on, it means a service like identity needs to be extremely resilient and reliable. Since 2018, we're really proud to say Okta has now gone below a 99.99% uptime, while simultaneously handling billions of authentications on a monthly basis. And secure by design means the service should be more secure than anything you can build and operate on your own. It should adhere to compliance requirements based on geography and industry. If you could actually go back to the last slide, Mark. And that's why we've built security at every layer of the stack, from our secure software development lifecycle, our multi-layer encryption, zero trust controls, and more. And actually, in the month of January, we protected Okta customers from more than 2 billion security attacks. And lastly, the service needs to seamlessly scale up and down to meet your needs and business growth. And if you could go to the next slide. So, how do we provide these building blocks? How do we make it possible? It really starts with our fault-tolerant architecture, which is a key and underappreciated enabler. And this is a high-level overview. Obviously, there's a lot more details to this. I'm not doing this justice and not giving credit to our amazing engineering team that's built such a always-on, highly secure and scalable solution. But we have what's known as an active architecture within a given AWS region. So what that means is your traffic is being served by any one of these availability zones. And it's architected and designed in a way that's called cell-based architecture. So like if one of these AZs or two of these AZs were to go down, that remaining AZ is still built in a way and has sufficient capacity built in that it could handle all that traffic for all customers within that region. And now you may be wondering, what happens like if this region goes down? We've seen that in the past, right? It's a rare event, but it can be possible. So Mark, if you go to the next slide, Okta does provide 2 levels of protection due to protection from disasters. And so the first one is standard disaster recovery. It's available to all customers out of the box. And basically it fails over organizations within a cell or region from the primary region to the disaster recovery region within 1 hour. So in this example, your primary region could be in Northern Virginia and the disaster recovery region is in Oregon. With enhanced disaster recovery, this is for customers that have more sensitivity to downtime. They want higher availability, faster failover. Enhanced disaster recovery reduces the failover time from that 1 hour to 5 minutes. And that's 5 minutes from when Okta identifies that a failover is needed and actually triggers that failover. And one key differentiator between standard and enhanced is that with enhanced, customers can actually request that only certain organizations be failed over. They may be spread across, so maybe one organization is not feeling that impact, and so they only want Okta to fail over one organization. Whereas with standard DR, right, we're failing over all organizations in that cell. Regardless of what level you think is right for you, both failovers provide read-only access to make sure core authentication capabilities continue to work. Both will issue new refresh tokens for users, so you're not relying on stale metadata to make sure authentication continues to work. Read-write access, it will be restored within 24 hours. And then both have an RPO or recovery point objective of 1 hour, which basically states like how much data loss you can expect. In practice, we've seen it's mostly real time, but from a legal standpoint, we do state the RPO as 1 hour. And then Mark, if you go to the next slide, this is my last one. Before I hand it back to Mark, I did want to quickly mention and touch on one more thing, and that's the shared responsibility model. Between Okta and AWS, we reduce overhead significantly for our customers. But being a SaaS provider, there are some, customer responsibilities that need to be taken care of. Um, some of this may seem obvious to you, but it does come up time to time. But if you take as an example, managing configurations or access within any tenant or any data loss from misconfigurations that occur, Okta's built capabilities and implemented protection at a platform level. So like we'll take a backup of an entire cell, for example, but for like customer privacy reasons, we don't take backup of individual tenants. So like if you're Joe at Acme company, and you accidentally delete 100 users, or like you deleted your access policies by mistake, like you wouldn't be able to, reach out to us, unfortunately, and say, hey, can you roll back my tenant to 2 hours ago? Um, so this is where we actually have partners like HYCU that solve these problems for customers, which I think is a great stopping point for me and a great transition over to you, Mark, to kind of share more about what HYCU does and how it helps solve some of these challenges.
Yeah, no, awesome. Thanks, Akash. Great overview of what Okta does and how you bring a very resilient service to your customers, our joint customers, to really provide kind of, I always call it like the front door for your data center, right? You really control who gets in, who has access to what, and so on. So
Exactly.
really good. And Akash, I think you completely agree, right? And we live in a world that is getting more and more complex really, really quickly, right? If you just look around,
Yep.
we did a survey with some of our customers and so on. Everybody is working on their data modernization, their data center modernization. They are adopting hybrid clouds. A lot of organizations are using more than just one standard public cloud alongside their set of data centers and so on. But then one of the more interesting tidbits that we found out is that the average organization in the US actually is using something like 200 SaaS services, right? So the proliferation of services, and basically, if you think about it, the amount of attack services has increased significantly, right? If you look at the slide over here on the left, about 20 years ago, everything was running on-prem. Everything was running within your data center, within your castle. You were in full control, basically, of who gets in, who gets out, right? It was, in a way, a much simpler task back then. But as we have modernized our data centers, and as people started using and leveraging more and more cloud-based services, it gets, like I said, complex really, really quickly. First, of course, with the advent of public cloud and some of the initial SaaS services. But right now, like I said, the average company is using hundreds of SaaS services. So there's a real proliferation of attack services, but also a lack of visibility, because in the end, only something like half of those SaaS services are actually managed by central IT. There's a lot of departmental services that are being put in use, or even individual services. So when I talk to like a CIO, sometimes they're like, yeah, all of these services and all of these data sources are popping up, but I don't even know about them. If I don't know about them, how can I even protect them, right? And so that's basically that I want to go a little bit further on today, right? Visibility is really foundational for you as the person that is responsibility for data protection across the entire organization. Like I said, if you don't know what's running out there in your org, how can you even protect it, right? So having a way of identifying applications, data sources, cloud resources that are in use across your entire organization is absolutely key, right? Because in the end, if there are applications in use that you cannot protect, and there is mission critical information or maybe department critical information in there, and they fall away, there's an oopsie moment, somebody deletes something by mistake, or more and more like malicious actors go in and they start prodding around in there, then there might be a significant impact on your organization. And then, of course, there's the angle of compliance and regulatory needs as well, right? You need to be able to show as an organization that you are well protected, that you are compliant with all of the regulations in your industry, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we look at Okta specifically, there's a lot of value of the data and configuration that is stored within Okta as well. Like Akash was saying, they have built a very resilient solution, a very resilient service. But Akash explains, if somebody goes in and deletes 100 users, in the end, that is your responsibility, right? Okta really controls who has access to what data sources. So if somebody goes in and starts changing things, that could mean that unauthorized users get access to data they should never see, maybe financial data in Salesforce, or vice versa. They could cut off access to applications and services completely across the entire organization, right? So this really can drive your business to a halt. Operational disruptions, people losing morale. Of course, there's costs associated with recovery, and in the end, it might lead to reputation damage, right? Okta really is the gateway to your entire estate. So it's really critical to start thinking about, how am I going to protect Okta, right? I explained there is operational data loss if something goes wrong in terms of accidental deletions, if there's bugs in scripts, if there are rogue admins, if there are more organized crimes as well, like cyber attacks and ransomware, right? You can go on the dark web right now and they have ransomware as a service, right? So it becomes, for the bad guys, it becomes a lot easier basically to start attacking all of those vectors, all of those attack services that you, as the IT admin, as the CIO, as the VP of IT, are managing and are responsible for. Right. And then, of course, I already touched on this, security and compliance, right? You need to show to your auditors that you are in control over data retention, over data governance, all of those rules that are in place for very, very good reasons. So what we've done at Okta, what we've done at HYCU is actually we've built a solution for discovery based on the Okta platform. Within our cloud service today, we have a discovery tool that we call HYCU rGraph, and we phrase this as, we bring Okta discovery to life. Right. So basically, we use the information that is stored within Okta around applications, around access, and so on, and we overlay that with information around, hey, are these services protected natively? Right? Are they giving you access to, maybe can I export my data so I can do a manual backup? Or are there automated backups within the tool itself? Or are there self-service restore capabilities? Is there something like a trash can that I can restore files or applications that were deleted maybe 20 days ago, and so on? So basically, with rGraph, we leverage that information, we visualize that, we structure it so it becomes really easy to see what is out in your organization, what is protected natively, and what can HYCU basically protect on top of that. How can we build better protection over there? So quick identification of unprotected applications, right? And we basically do that by looking at all of those data sources, looking at, do they have that native protection? If not, can HYCU protect them? And then basically bubble that up to the departmental and to the organization level to show you a risk assessment across your entire organization, right? How many data sources are there? How many of them are protected? And of those that are protected, are we actually meeting the SLAs that the business has set out to protect those data sources, in terms of how often do I take a backup? How long do I keep that backup around? Where is it stored, and so on? So within one view, somebody like a VP of IT, a CIO, a CISO can see, oh, I'm actually doing decent in terms of protection, right? About 1/3 of my data sources are protected. But in terms of compliance, I'm doing really, really well. And then from here, of course, you can protect all of those unprotected data sources really quickly using HYCU as well. And of course, we protect Okta itself, but we go much, much broader than just Okta, right? With rGraph, you can discover all of these data sources, and then you can actually set up protection for these data sources using our policy-based backup policies to basically store data within different storage locations. A few key things to consider, I would say, right? One thing, when you're thinking about storing backups, you need to know where those backups are being stored, because in the end, the data within those backups could be very, very critical, could be very, very important, could be very, very sensitive to your organization. So I always recommend store the backups in storage that you don't accept a solution that keeps your backup data within their stack, right? Because you don't know exactly from a data governance perspective how that is being handled. The best way is store it back in like an S3 bucket, in a Google Cloud Storage bucket that you own, right? So from a data governance perspective, from a data ownership perspective, it's a very clear picture there. Leverage storage capabilities like data at rest encryption, like worm capabilities to really lock down access to your backups. Because in the end, right, think of a backup as almost like the last line of defense against any attack. Yes, you can have very active layers around your data estate in terms of firewalls and identity management and networking intrusion systems and things like that. But it's nowadays, it's not a question of if something happens, it's more a question of when it happens. So having a backup of your data, of your configuration is absolutely critical to restore really, really quickly. But the bad guys, they don't sit still either. They get really smart as well. So if they notice that there is a backup available, they'll try to attack that as soon as possible, right? So having a way of encrypting your backups, and then basically with worm storage, worm means write only, read many times. I can basically write my backup, but then nobody can encrypt that backup. Nobody can delete that backup until the worm timer expires. So if I set a worm timer for, say, 6 months, your backups are safe for those 6 months. Nobody can delete them. Nobody can encrypt them. So you can always recover to any point in time before that timer expires. You also need to look at SLAs, and sometimes this gets really, really tricky, right? If there are, say, 200 SaaS services in using your organization, what is actually important? And sometimes that knowledge is very deep in your organization, right? So what HYCU has done is we've introduced policies, backup policies, where you can basically identify classes of those applications, classes of those data sources, and then apply a policy, and then basically everything get automatically protected. So Salesforce, for instance, you can say, I want to back this up 4 times a day because I cannot afford losing more than 6 hours of work. Whereas if there is a file share with pictures from the last company picnic, you probably want to keep a backup, a weekly backup or a monthly backup, right? So think of those SLAs, work with the business owners, work with the application owners to understand how critical this data is, how what the impact would be if it goes down, how quickly it needs to recover, things like that. You also need to look at compliance. Are there compliance requirements for those particular data sources, right? Salesforce, you might have very strict compliance record of requirements for, but those barbecue pictures that I was talking about, probably not, right? So that's another angle that you need to look at. And then, of course, think about how you want to segment out access to your backups, right? Not every backup admin needs to be able to back up and restore every application, especially in larger organizations. You might want to segregate out access, right? So think of ways of using identity and role-based access control to segregate access. Maybe people within engineering can only manage engineering backups, and people within marketing can only manage those applications that are in use within applications. So think through that. All of these capabilities, all of these requirements. Of course, we have a little bit of self promotion over here. All of these requirements we can very easily meet with HYCU R Cloud, right? We do have the ability to store data in your storage. We are very well integrated with the storage targets around worm, around data at rest encryption. And we have those policies that I was talking about. We have RBAC built into our solution, so you can set up what we call protection sets to create those domains for separating out engineering from marketing, from sales, from production, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the end, we're the only vendor recognized by Gartner that actually has a very broad set of SaaS services that we support. Much, much broader than any of our competitors that are out there. Want to conclude with 5 takeaways, basically, that you need to think through when you think about how do I protect my modern data estate? How do I leverage Okta? How do I leverage HYCU Cloud to basically improve your security posture, to have that multi-layer approach to security around going from basically access management, network firewall management, all the way to that last known line of good defense that I was talking about. Number 1, you bring Okta to life, right? I showed you our graph. Use that to discover applications and data sources within your organization that you might not even know about. They might not be protected. You might want to think about, how do I protect those, right? Design that multi-layer security protection. There's so many attack vectors that we have to think about. So really look at it from each and every angle and make sure that you have an answer within your security practice for all of those vectors. A platform built for trust, right? Akash in the beginning talked about deploy Okta for access control, identity management, leverage basically HYCU to leverage that information within Okta to discover, but then also protect the information within Okta. Data resiliency, of course, you need to have that last known copy somewhere on storage that you own that is protected against changes and encryptions and deletions and so on. So it's, like I said, it's not if, it is when it's going to happen. And you need to be able to discover that quickly, but also react very quickly. So the impact on your business is absolutely minimized. And then, of course, in the end, we all want to sleep well at night, right? Knowing that you're fully protected, knowing that you can test out recoveries, and knowing that when something goes wrong, you can hit the button and do a very quick recovery is absolutely key to having a very good sleep at night. With that, let's look at what's next. Couple of call to actions for you. I would implore each and every one of you to sign up for a free trial of HYCU Graph built on the Okta platform, right? We give you completely free access to this. Go to the HYCU.com website, scan the QR code. In just a couple of minutes, you can basically build the connection to Okta, and you can start that discovery. Okta has a very good white paper on how they're basically build out their infrastructure, their architecture to scale to 50 billion users, while giving you that sense of goodness around being able to basically what Akash was talking about, active, to make sure that the Okta service is always available. And then, of course, pointed to trustedokta.com as well, where Okta is very open and transparent around everything that they do to basically make their service available and resilient. Akash, anything you want to add over there? Pick it back over to you for a second.
No, that was it. You summarized it well. The white paper has great content in there that really dives a level deeper than what I just shared very briefly. So I encourage everyone to take a few minutes, read it. And then Trust.Okta is generally a very great resource for customers and just anyone more interested in learning about how Okta and what steps we're taking to protect our customers. And there's a lot of great resources from our compliance to security to our resiliency and what we're doing to ensure that we continue to maintain and retain that trust of our customers.
Perfect. Awesome. I've seen some questions popping in. John, I see you popping online as well. Anything that we want to talk about live, Jonathan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining the call. My name is John Campos, and I support platform and infrastructure here on the product team. And we actually have a few questions for the Okta side, but we also have a few questions for the HYCU side here. So I'm taking a look at our Q&A here. I think this one first is for you, Akash. For enhanced disaster recovery, does the customer initiate the failover themselves, or does Okta? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as of now, today, Okta does initiate the failover. So we have monitoring in place where we're monitoring enhanced DR customers and their environment for signals that we believe will potentially could result in a failover. And so our operations and engineering teams are continuously assessing that. But then obviously customers may have their own monitoring built in where they can see signals or their users are calling in saying, they're unable to log into applications. And that's where the customer can reach out to our support team and request a failover as well. But the actual failover today is Okta driven. Now, that said, we are in the works of making that more customer driven. We're working on a capability where customers can initiate the failover themselves rather than having to rely on Okta. I will mention, our safe harbor agreement for that because this is something that isn't available today, something that is forward-looking, but that is something that we're thinking about very, very closely and a lot. Is how do we give customers that control of failing over their organization based off their own criteria, because we realize every customer, every industry is different, and the failover criteria is going to vary. And so that's something in the works as well. But for today, it is Okta driven.
And Akash, what I did there was I also added our support article on what the process is. If a customer did want to request a failover, they can do that. What about another question we have here? It looks like for the Okta side is, how can I learn more about enhanced disaster recovery? And I think actually, Akash, I can take that one. So what I'm going to do is for everyone to take a look at the our FAQ page. So we have actually a very helpful FAQ page that you can check out. And I'm going to put this link here on the Zoom chat for enhanced disaster recovery here. And we have a lot of our most common questions answered, but definitely Okta.com has all of the great resources with regards to enhanced disaster recovery. Check out our FAQ. Our FAQ has all of the details, everything you need to know with regards to enhanced disaster recovery. And if you are an existing Okta customer, you can absolutely navigate to your account team, and your account team can definitely set up a call with us, both Akash and myself, to help you learn more. On the HYCU side, it looks like we have a couple questions. Mark, you want me to go ahead and read those out to you?
Yes, please.
Awesome. So it looks like, can I use HYCU to restore into a different Okta account?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get that a lot as well. What people are looking for is basically a way of kind of setting up like a test dev environment, a seeding environment where they can test out certain changes and so on without impacting production. So yes, from a product capability, we actually introduced a new capability to take a backup from one Okta instance and then make a clone of that in the configuration of that instance into a different service account. So yes, we do support that now. I'm very happy to see that being used by our customers. Just like I said, set up seeding environments, set up test dev environments. So that is 100% there today, Jonathan.
Awesome. It looks like we also have another question. How fast can I do a recovery in the case that something goes wrong? So if it's not it's not like a specific infrastructure issue, but something went wrong, how can HYCU help?
Yeah, so and this is really a story where we work really well together, right? Like what Akash was saying, if something goes wrong at the infrastructure level, contact Okta support right now, and you can basically start doing the fail. They can start the failover for you. But if something like a little bit smaller happens, maybe somebody deleted some accounts or some policies or some groups that are actually critical, you can log into the HYCU our cloud interface, and in just a few clicks and just a few minutes, you can completely restore that environment. You can choose to restore the entire instance, or you can go very granular and you can select a single policy or a single group to restore. I would love to do a demo at some point in time. Maybe we should plan for a follow-up where it's more a show and tell. But yeah, within a few minutes, I would say you can recover from any kind of oopsie or accidental or malicious attack within your organization, Jonathan.
Perfect. And then it looks like we have two more questions here. Can I take a backup manually before big changes occur on the Okta platform side?
Yes, another great use case. Yes, absolutely. So the way we take backups, like I explained, we assign a backup policy, right? And that sets up the automatic backups, right? So we take care of the schedules and the jobs and storage management and so on. So every every morning, maybe at 3:30, we take a backup of your Okta instance and store that in storage that you own, like I explained. But we also have the ability to manually create backups on top of that automated schedule. So if you have a case where you're about to make some big changes and you're kind of nervous about it, go ahead, take a backup. So now you have a known good copy of your configuration, make the changes. If something goes wrong, you can roll back in just a few minutes without any impact to your to your regular business.
And it looks like we have one more question. It looks like we have a customer here asking, or rather an attendee, how they can easily get started.
Yeah, great question as well. Let me go back to my previous slide over here. When you sign up for the free Artgraph trial, you also get a 2-week trial to protect Okta. I should have mentioned that before when I was still on this slide. When you sign up for Artgraph, you also get 2 weeks where you can set up protection of either your production Okta or a sandbox environment, and you can actually see how we do the protection, how you set up the protection there, and play with those powerful granular restore capabilities. 2 weeks for free. If you want to test it out longer, let me know. I have access to the backend. I can extend the access of your trial as well.
Awesome. It looks like, let me just check here. If Okta is not managing a legacy application, will HYCU be able to protect it?
The quick answer is yes. If Okta doesn't know about it, if it cannot discover it, but because it's not, maybe access is done outside of Okta, doesn't just username, password, things like that, we can still protect it. You can basically go into the HYCU marketplace, hit the configure button over there, and basically give us the information on how to access that application and how to back it up, basically. Of course, this goes broader than just applications. HYCU can protect on-prem virtual machines, on-prem infrastructure like VMware and Nutanix as well, and then also public cloud resources like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. All of those can be managed through HYCU Cloud as well.
Awesome, awesome. Looks like, hang on here. Let me just make sure. I want to scroll and make sure I don't have anything else. Yep, looks like we've got all the questions here, Mark and Akash. I'm not sure if there was anything else you guys wanted to add, but the floor is yours.
I think we're all good over here. Thanks everybody for attending. We will follow up with an email with all of these resources as well. But feel free to hit the links in the chat that Jonathan shared. Perfect way to end over here. I see a last minute question coming in from Peter. I'll follow up with you offline on that, Peter. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.